when you do get people on the phone through an IVR, they're more receptive to a conversation and more likely to actually convert.
Valid, not valid, add. It's a bad number, non-working. So when we make a call, we either want to get to a working number or the person. If it's not a working number or the person, we shouldn't call it again.
All right, y'all, you're in for a treat today. Not just because I'm going to put this hat over my headset like this,
It actually fits
but
pretty well like
because
that.
it does. This is for like the biggest head on earth. This episode's going to be a little different than all the previous ones because this one is PhD level. So if you're curious about what happens beneath the surface from I have a phone number to the people who pick up, we're going to break down what millions of dials over tons of years have taught us when it comes to connect rates, reach, and receptivity across different phone lines. Answering questions like, does it make sense to call landlines anymore? Should I even call companies if they have an admin, a secretary, a gatekeeper? Everything will be answered, so stay tuned. This episode is about reach and receptivity rates. Ready to dive into it?
Worry worm.
Should you call business lines, landlines, cell phones, fax machines? Here today to give you the answer is Ryan Reisert.
Well, you should absolutely call fax machines if you want to lose
And
your
that's a
hearing.
wrap. Great episode today.
So-
Have you ever called a fax line? It's like the most irritating thing. You get
No,
like that dial tone.
I've never called a fax machine ever. Kids these days don't know. Kids these days don't know what we're talking about.
They don't even know what that is. They think that that is just a meme when you're trying to say facts, but
Facts.
it's just used as a fax, and they don't really know what a fax machine does.
Facts.
Fax. Can you fax?
Fixing to ask me a question.
So what are line types anyway? Like, and why do they matter?
So let's take a step back and talk about, I think, a super interesting concept that's come up over the last, let's say, 5 years or so since the pandemic. I guess it's 6 years, coming on 6 years now. Yeah, that's crazy.
I
Since
think
the
pandemic, not pandemic. You
pandemic,
really emphasize the pan part of it.
pan.
Like we got a frying pan. All right, so you're about to stir it up now with phone numbers.
There we
I'll
go.
try to keep us on track every now and again.
Facts. You're asking me a question. 100%. 100%. So when you think about what everybody's been after since the pandemic, there's been this obsession with we got to find mobile numbers, otherwise we won't get anybody on the phone. No one's in the office anymore, so we need to call mobiles. When you actually look at what you're trying to accomplish when you're using any channel to get a conversation started, this is Buckets 101. We take a list, we make sure that they're the right person in the account that we want to be going after in the first place, and then we make sure the account is qualified, right? Let's assume that that's true. We have the contact information for the individual. We should be testing. We're talking about a phone right now, but it could be for the same for LinkedIn and social, email, social, whatever. Like every channel should be tested for our path towards reachability, right? So we have on the phone side typically 3 line types, right? Phones are going to break down into 3 line types defined by path. Okay, path is the first thing we're after. So we make a call against the number, and we have either a direct path. Direct line would be mostly mobiles, but a direct could also be an old school direct desk line,
Office, desk, yeah.
landline, or whatever it might be. You have a human path, some human in the loop. That's going to be broken down into a gatekeeper or an operator. And then you're going to have an IVR path. IVR is some sort of acronym for a computer you have to navigate. So that's either a dial tree or a say by name, or these cases, I would bucket it into the AI assistants, right? It's a computer in the mix.
This is an iPhone assistant. Tell me, how can I direct your call?
So
Please state your name.
Those are the paths to define a line type. Then you also want to have a validation outcome, which is either a valid number or a not valid number or a bad number, non-working number.
What's the difference between not valid and not working?
Not valid, not validated. This is straight from the book, Outbound Sales No Fluff. This is before Titan-X or Phone Writer Leads adopted the P's categories of scoring because we had a bunch of Me Too copycats.
Yep.
Who were basically replicating the system. And then we created a whole new system that we called P1, P2, P3, and then they replicated that as well. So you can tell who's copying The system, a validated number is I can validate that the person that I'm intending to reach is confirmed by name. So somebody records their name in their voicemail, that would be a validated number. A not validated number would be working. It gets to a voicemail, but it's generic. I can't hear their name in the voicemail.
Oh, so
They didn't program their name.
it's just the unknown data.
It's an unknown.
What you've said in the past is like the worst data in Outbound, because you just keep calling it, but you don't even know if you're calling.
Not true. Not true. It might be.
Okay.
That's different than workable, not validated. See, this is why this is an important topic. It gets very. This is where people get lost in the sauce.
Break that down. Now I'm getting lost in the sauce here.
Correct. So when we make a call against a list for the first time, we want to identify path and validation outcome. Path, 3 types: human, IVR. Validation outcome: valid, not valid, add. It's a bad number, non-working. So when we make a call, we either want to get to a working number or the person. If it's not a working number or the person, we shouldn't call it again. So make a call, I document the path with the line type, the validation outcome, and I determine how I should operationalize my list for the next callback. Now, when I make a call against that list, if I get to a non-working number, I should never call it again. If I get blocked and I cannot get to a voicemail, I probably shouldn't call it again. Now, that voicemail is going to get broken down into valid and not. That's the concept of a P2 and a P3 in scoring, by the way. Lots of work that goes into this, as you can kind of understand here. This is what's going on. So make a list, path, validation outcome. Now, when I call back a list, here's how the math works. If my average dial to connect rate was, let's say, 5% on a cold list, I have 100 people, I call through all the numbers and I get 5 pickups on 100 dials. Okay, 5% dial to connect rate. If that was my average connect rate on that list, when I actually look at the next pass on the list and I separate my direct validated numbers, they're going to have almost a 2.5, almost 3 times higher dial to connect rate than my IVR not validated. That'll be about 1/6 the connect rate of my direct. Like there's like a 6x difference between my not valid IVRs and my direct valid numbers. And then there's a whole combination in between.
And so that explains why when you do score a list in Titan X, a lot of the numbers you get back as P1s, phone ready, are usually direct lines and less frequently IVRs.
Yeah, we'll get into the breakdown in a second so you can understand this. But yes, it's true. This is the whole point. It's true that a direct number, whether it's mobile or landline direct, will have a higher connect rate on average than landlines or business lines, whatever you want to call it. You always have to ask people what they mean by this, right? So if you're calling a business like a corporate line, that might be a human or an IVR transfer. You want to document this. Connect rate wise, direct will have the highest. Direct valid will have the highest. IVR transfer have the lowest. That being said, and the percentage of connects will come from that. That being said, the conversion rate, the positive outcomes you will get from a conversation, IVR will have a higher conversion rate than direct. In fact, it's about 2 times higher. So people who pick up from each of the line types, an IVR picker upper, who's the hardest to reach, is actually 2 times more likely to convert than a direct picker upper.
Wow. All right, let's digest that really quickly.
Now let's talk about why all this matters.
Wait, so before you go on, just to digest that final point, although getting a hold of your prospect through an IVR where you have to dial by name into some sort of tech process, whatever, is going to be a lot harder to get people on the phone. When you do get people on the phone through an IVR, they're more receptive to a conversation and more likely to actually convert. Whereas if you call someone on a direct line, oftentimes someone's mobile number, you might have a higher connect rate, but the conversion rate is lower.
Right. And that's due to a couple factors, right? The first thing we're talking about is reachability. That's connect rate. It's the wrong thing to actually care about. What you really care about is receptivity, which is why we care about activations, because the long-term value of the entire phone system is that we've mapped our market, we know who is reachable and receptive, and we have an idea of timing for follow-up. So directs will get you more connects. They will also get you more bad data and more non-receptive folks. Now let's break down why that might be. Phone psychology. Why does somebody who has a direct valid number pick up more often than someone that has an IVR not validated number was. So the first thing to think about is
Why are
if
they answering the phone?
on the not the path, but the validation outcome. If I'm a person who takes the time to program my name in my voicemail, it kind of makes sense logically that I'm more likely to pay attention to people calling me, and I'm more likely to probably use my phone because I'm making sure that the people who are calling me know it's me. Doesn't that just make sense? If I program my voicemail, I'm more likely to like pay attention to my phone and actually want you to like call me. I want you to know it's me. That's why I've programmed my voicemail. So that makes sense logically. If I take the time to program my voicemail, I'm more likely to probably pick up the phone and use the phone as a part of my engagement with strangers because I've programmed my voicemail. If I didn't do that, like Ronen, you have my number. You don't need to hear my voicemail to know it's you, and you'd leave the voicemail because like you know me, right? We're in our contacts. So people who program their voicemail want strangers to know it's them, right? It just makes sense logically, okay? So and the data just shows that, right? In fact, somebody who programs their voicemail, regardless of line type, is about 2 times more likely to pick up than if they don't. Just take all the line type stuff out of it. Valid versus not valid is about a 2x lever, okay? Now, on the line type perspective, same, this is another level, and I'm not going to give away all of this, but these are the 2 things I typically explain to people so they understand all the work that goes into like how the bucketing process works and how you want to prioritize your list, and then how to also effectively use Titan X scoring. On a company side, if I staff humans to transfer calls, the operator transfer component, or even block calls, that's a signal of if I want the people at my company to be taking calls, right? So if I staff a human to like an operator where you call in and all you have to do is say like, I'm looking for Ronen. Yeah, no problem. Let me transfer you. That type of phone number is more, the whole entire company, everyone at that company is more likely to pick up the phone than if I put a dial tree in there. I'm basically saying, I don't want people to easily get through. I don't want them to have to go through this long, laborious, annoying process to get to my people. Again, think about it. It makes sense, right? If I have a very quick, I want everyone who calls my company to hear a human as soon as they pick up. The culture of my company is that I want my people on the phone. So now what happens is if you combine those 2 concepts, a human that transfers phone calls and I program my name and my voicemail at a company as a non-direct line type, they are 4 times more likely to pick up than a IVR that's not validated. It's about a 2x lever. Okay, makes sense. If the company doesn't prioritize numbers being transferred, and once I actually get through, the person hasn't recorded their name, that's like the hardest person to reach, right? Which, like I said, a direct valid is about a 6x more likely to pick up than an IVR transfer not. Okay, so then when you start to combine all this stuff and you get down to the point where I now know these are the people who pick up the phone and these people who don't, the people that you want to prioritize first are IVRs who pick up the phone before humans who transfer who pick up the phone before directs who transfer. Or sorry, directs who pick up the phone. From a conversion rate perspective. Now, the
Because
breakdown of that is about 80 to 90% of your people who are likely to pick up the phone will come from direct lines. You're only going to get about 10 to 20% of your total reachable list through another line type, but you can get a 2x lever on your conversion rate. And so that's actually a significant portion of your potential productivity. And most companies completely avoid, most reps, most companies are completely avoiding those line types these days. And there's gold to be mined there. However, it's like, again, let's say it's 5 to 20% max of your total reachable audience, which, as we know, maybe your total reachable audience is only 20%. So we're talking about like sub 5% of the total list that's actually in that bucket max. If your reach was 25%, you might see 5% of that 25% being in the IVR and human transfer who pick up, but that's gold in terms of conversion rates and productivity. So long-winded, very in-depth analysis, but I've posted this in the past. I've shown some data that we ran, and this was not very small
data. Where does that data come from?
All the data I just shared.
Yeah, like where do your findings?
That's what I was saying. I have this from something I put together when we were running phone rate leads, calling as a service program. So we had I don't know, probably 9 or 10 months of data across like 20 different companies. And I ran an analysis on what was probably about over 10,000 attempts into just phone ready leads, and then over 100,000 attempts on scoring data. So I ran all of this back when we had the live show, and I shared all this data from the scoring results and then how it broke down and all the different lifetime analysis. Inside the Call Blitz community, I go through a whole exercise. I just posted it today, just explaining this to somebody. That's why it came up as an important topic, because she was asking about, should I be calling landlines? And the point is, you should be calling
Yes.
all numbers,
Yes is the answer.
and then you should be running the buckets process. You should run validation. After one time through a list, you should prioritize for connect purposes. If you're just trying to solve for connect rate, direct before human before IVR, obviously valids before not valids. If you're trying to optimize for conversion, you should flip that and go the other way. So some people try to optimize for speed. Speed to conversation is usually the most important element. Go for connects first. However, if you really, really know your prospect and they're very high value prospects and you have limited time, I would actually go the other way and focus on the harder to reach ones first, because you only have a limited amount of time. And then the way you know that you've exhausted the potential channel is if you go through a specific number. So if you have multiple numbers on a contact, you have to call all of them this many times. But a specific number on a contact, by 5 times attempting one number, you're going to get about 80% of the people that are likely to pick up at that number to have picked up. By 10 times through, it's about 95%. 20 times through, you will have reached 98% of the people. So there's this massive diminishing curve that occurs after, let's say, 7 or 8 attempts, pretty much gotten over 80%, up to 90% of all the people that are likely to pick up to have picked up. And so if you institute the Pareto principle here, 80-20 rule, and you really want to be efficient, if you take a list, you put it into a sequence. Step 1 is call, run validation, document path and outcome. Split it up now between line types and validation outcomes, where now the next time you go through a list, you can prioritize based on however you're structuring this, speed or quality. And then you only go through, let's say, 7, maybe 8 attempts max on that list. By the time you've gone through all of those records, you will know that you've probably reached most of the people that are likely to pick up. Or, by the way, if you really want to do a fast track on this, you just go take your list, send it to Titanx. It'll do all this work for you, and you can just focus on calling the people to pick up the phone.
Man, without a doubt, you have earned your dissertation defense and PhD in cold calling 101. I mean, this is probably the most intricate breakdown I've ever heard in my entire life, explaining the nuance that I'd say, I don't know, 9 out of 10 people don't even think about, let alone know. And the people who think about it probably don't know. It's wild how deep your knowledge goes in this, Ryan. For everyone viewing this, if you stayed all the way through to this point, congratulations. I think you deserve some sort of award. I don't know what it is. Hopefully you got something out of this.
Well, the reward would be, if you actually put this into practice, you could think beyond eliminating unnecessary dial attempts to the wrong types. And if you're super confident that the people that you actually want to reach are the right people, then don't avoid those non-mobile numbers up to a certain number of attempts, which again, I gave you the numbers. You can call
That's
people
right.
up to 20 times. Up to 20 times, you're going to reach 98% of people. There's this super long tail. And I have all that data from, 7, 8 years of using Connect and Sell. And for the last portion of that, before I launched Phone Ready Leads, I was running a series during the pan that was called the path, something. It was like the path back, but we were literally posting like the connect rates. There was 4 stats. It was like connect rate, talk time, a conversion rate, and something else. I can't remember, but it was every week I was posting the change in data across all of Connect and Sell's customer base. So it was like 5, 6, 7 million dials a month every week. That trend, I was posting this data, so I know how this works across literally hundreds of millions of dials over the years. The data I just shared with you is facts.
Well, you guys heard it here
Ask me
first.
a question.
Do drop a comment below if you loved or hated the episode, and hit the subscribe button if you want some more. And as always, we're the Outbound Operators. I'm Ronen Pessar. This is Professor Ryan Reisert, PhD. And stay tuned for the next one.
Facts.